privilege this morning to introduce Andy Grose, who will be presenting to us this morning about his experience at the Passion Play in Oberammergau, Germany earlier this year. And so without further ado, I introduce and officially welcome Andy to the podium.
So I'm sure I'm a man who needs no introduction. We'll see if that's true or not. Thank you all for your interest in this. It was a unique experience that I had, and it seemed like something that was worth sharing. And so that's why we're here today. The music that you just heard playing. Oh, okay. Thank you. The music that you just heard playing was recorded at the Passion Play, not by me that night, but at an earlier time there. So you were actually hearing the music from the Passion Play. Just to help introduce this, there's lots of, I think, kinds of, can you believe it, about this experience. One of them is the size of the musical organizations. What you heard was an orchestra of 65 musicians, a chorus of 56 soloists, 56 presenters, 17 of whom were soloists, including as well as the actors, which brought this whole thing to about 200 people to put this Passion Play on each time. So, some of the background. The Passion Play was first performed in 1636. That's quite a ways back to have something that continues to run every 10 years now. And it's been doing that with very few exceptions for almost 500 years. What's also amazing is the fact that it's all done by a town with a population of less than 5,000 people. So it's smaller than Cloverdale, and they produce this thing every 10 years. I heard about the Passion Play when we lived in Germany from 67 to 70, but I never went and was not really that interested in going. But some of you know that my life and Jackie's life changed a bit earlier this year in October, as a matter of fact, when Jackie went into memory care. And for the first time, I was alone. Since the first time, I think the last time I was alone was when I had a room in college. And so it was an adjustment for all of us. And so one of the things that I was wondering is, what would I do with these changes in my life? And one of them, I got this thing from the University of Maryland Alumni Association saying they were sponsoring this trip to the Passion Play. I said, the Passion Play, I've heard of it. And so I looked into it and found out more about it. And I decided that a fellow who's my best friend, who is a real fan of choral music and especially sacred music, this would just be something he would love, and he would go with me. And that's all I had to say. And he did, and we had a wonderful time together. The package deal was with Viking Tours, and that's where most of the attendees come from, is various package tours around the world, really, to attend this. And so it included a Danube cruise. And so we saw places including Munich, Salzburg, Passau, where we got on the boat, Linz, Austria, Krems, Austria, Vienna, Bratislava, Budapest, and Prague. So if you ever wanted to tour of Eastern Europe, this was it. Never had better food in my life than a Viking tour, so I commend that for what it's worth. But that's not what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about today is the Passion Play itself. And we'll start out reiterating some of the statistics I already mentioned. A town of 5,000 people in Bavaria, in the German Alps, close to Garmisch, which is a world-famous ski venue. In this town, as I referred to earlier, 5,000 people, every 10 years, they produce this thing. And I told you about the size of the orchestra, the musicians, the soloists. Total performers, 200 people. In addition to 4 horses, 1 donkey, 3 camels, 4 sheep, and occasional live birds, released at each performance. That, of course, was when Christ threw the money changers out of the temple. It's a massive stage, about 120 feet across. The audience each night is each day is 4,700 people, and every performance is a sellout. Each performance is 6 hours long. Now, you don't sit continually for 6 hours. No matter how good the music is, that would be hard. So it's 2 hours, and then 2 hours break for dinner, and then you come back for 2 more hours afterwards. Approximately 846,000 people will see it by the end of October. It boggles the mind. So how did it come about? The origin of the Passion Play is in Europe during the 30 Years' War. And for you, if you're not students of European history, I'll tell you that was the 30 Years' War was from 1618 to 1648. And it was largely a religious war. It ended at the Treaty of Westphalia. On top of this long, largely religious war was the plague that periodically swept through Europe, the Black Death, as it was commonly called. And everybody, of course, with good reason, feared the Black Death. And even with the concurrence of the church at that time, largely the Catholic Church, that things like this happen because there's sin, and you are responsible for these things that happen, so you have to do something to make up for the sins that you have. Oops, I don't know if this is essential to what I'm saying or not, but I thought I better put it back. So anyway, the idea was, well, what can we do to gain to restore God's love of us and to get away from the crime, to get away from the things that happen, the bad things that are happening, which are undoubtedly because we did something wrong. Well, this kind of thinking, of course, has evolved over the centuries, but it was prevalent at that time. So a passion play was one of the things that people came up with, and over 400 of them were performed at one time or another throughout Bavaria in this period of time. And of course, over the years, they faded away, except for this one. So how do you get in God's favor? Appease God, make amends for your sins. Oberammergau, as they say, was one of only a number of towns that did this. Originally, the Catholic Church in Oberammergau used its graveyard with a script produced by a monk from a local monastery for the very first performance. Today, the municipality of Oberammergau owns the play and oversees it. And it's not a Catholic thing, it's not a Protestant thing, it is the Passion Play, and it stands by itself. The play brings in some $84 million just from ticket sales. I noticed there were no potholes in Oberammergau. The council actually must approve everything in the play, and many residents weigh in, so there's great community involvement in this, which has been part of their long tradition. So how can you do a play this long over just 1 week in the life of Jesus? And this, when we talk about the Passion Play, we are talking about Holy Week, from Good Friday, from, what is the word I'm looking for? Yes, until Easter Sunday. Yes. So how can you play this long over 1 week? Well, first, the play, which is technically an oratorio, like an opera, goes into much more than that. It does this in 2 ways. First, by including Old Testament stories. And why do they do that? Because the theory is that Old Testament stories is how Jesus learned what the religion was about, what Judaism was about. And so these things shaped Jesus as a young man and as an adult. So there are about a dozen of these small plays within the larger play. Thus we see Adam and Eve expelled from Eden, Cain and Abel, Daniel in the lion's den, Moses and Pharaoh, Abraham willing to sacrifice Isaac, the trials of Job. These are called tableaux vivants. And this is an ancient form in plays, and it's like in Greek plays when you would have an actor come onto the stage who was not part of the play, but would explain to you what was happening or help you understand the play. And so that's the basis for how they do this. You might wonder how revising and updating is done. Isn't it all in the Bible? What we may not realize is that biblical history is constantly being studied and expanded. So we learn more things from discoveries like the Dead Sea Scrolls that were found after the Second World War in Egypt, or even more recently in 2013 when the Lost Gospel of Thomas was found. So it's by no means all over when the Bible was first written, and we'll come back to that in a moment. So we come to a better understand the Roman world in the 1st century AD through the research of historians and others, and the thinking of those who compiled the first Bibles. What were they thinking about? Who were those people? So the play, including the libretto, is updated every 10 years, reflecting new knowledge as well as new understanding of existing knowledge. This was especially true after the year 2000 performance, when the libretto, that is the script and the words and the actions, was changed in numerous ways. For example, it now goes into far greater detail, some very hard to watch, about the agony of Jesus as he tries to discern God's will as he is being scorned and tortured. You feel it viscerally. It's almost hard to watch. You want to turn away. It is so realistic. In addition, and very importantly, the 2000 play listened to the long-time criticism that the play was anti-Semitic. They did this in a number of ways. I think one example of how these changes were made and how important they were will illustrate the point. Now, there is a handout that you don't have to follow, but if you want to, you can. There's short extracts from the 2022 script. So this is a dialogue that begins between Pontius Pilate and Caiaphas. Pontius Pilate, of course, the governor of Rome, or the Roman governor of Jerusalem and Palestine, and Caiaphas, the high priest. So it begins with Pilate saying, "I want to talk to the high priest, alone." Pilate, "There's a great upheaval in the city, Caiaphas. Did anything special happen here? Many pilgrims come to Jerusalem for the Passover. Many pilgrims. I see. You know what I mean." "Yes, Pilate. He is an insignificant itinerant preacher." "Insignificant? Well. The whole city comes out to meet him. He entered Jerusalem like a king. You, the priests and teachers, have become a plaything of a man who defies you and ridicules you. And you call that insignificant?" Caiaphas replies, precisely these insignificant, Pontius Pilate says, "Let me enlighten you. It is precisely these insignificant itinerant preachers who, under the pretext of divine mission, provoke revolution and turmoil and tempt the people to fall into religious dedication. They lure them into the desert as if your God were to announce their freedom there by miraculous signs." And then Caiaphas comes back. "The city is quiet. No one is looking for turmoil or revolution. No one. I know you Jews. What purpose did your people serve before I took them over? A lost bunch without obedience, without leadership. I offered you Jews peace, freedom, and an amnesty for your crimes. But you disdained my gifts, and only after I ordered a horde of rebels to be crucified and those who made common cause with them to be executed was there peace in this God-forsaken land." Caiaphas says, "I begged you." Pilate, "You begged me. I allowed you to stay high priest. I gave you the office to watch over the peace and order in the city. I gave you everything you begged me for." He turns to his soldier saying, "I gave it to him because the hand of his God was over him." Pilate laughs. "Caiaphas, you mock me." "No, I'm not mocking you. If there is no peace in the city, I will take away everything I gave you. You know the emperor's message to the governors of the empire. Caiaphas, I know his message. Pilate, I will come with military forces and bring destruction to you, your land, and your people. Now go, throw the Galilean into the dungeon, and if he is not understanding even then, well, ... You can see that this version is historically sound and describes a very different version of the Roman role versus the Jewish role. How do we know the early Bible got this and other things wrong? The Bible is supposed to be right about everything. Well, you have to look at the history. And the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD was brought together by the Emperor Constantine to rationalize the various versions of the Bible that were floating around the empire. Constantine thought this was just all very confusing. He was a recent convert to Christianity himself, and he wanted to see it straightened out, squared out. So, because Christianity had become the official religion of Rome by this time, Constantine had actually accepted Christianity, and it made no sense to describe the crucifixion as an act of the Roman governor of the time and possibly upset Constantine and stand in the way of growing the church. Much better to blame the crucifixion on the Jews. Another area of change, treatment of women in the Bible, was also revised in the 2010 version of the Passion Play. Again, the problem arose at the Council of Nicaea. That is where Mary Magdalene is first referred to as a prostitute. The council was probably influenced by some of Paul's writings, which were very misogynist and probably affected that. But to show the changes from the Passion Play, the new dialogue given to Mary Magdalene is as follows. Rabbi, upon you rests the Spirit of the Lord, the Spirit of wisdom and reason, the Spirit of counsel and strength, the Spirit of knowledge, and the Spirit of the fear of the Lord. You do not judge by what the eyes see. You do not judge by what the ears hear. You judge the poor and the wretched of this land with righteousness. You love truthfulness and loathe sacrilege. Grace is poured from your lips. That is why God, your God, has anointed you before your companions. To the disciples, she says, God has blessed him forever. Okay, so there is much more in this play about Jesus, the man, and all about his human aspects, and less on the Son of God persona. Much more emphasis on Jesus trying to put an end to the expectations that this Messiah would be a political leader who could drive out the Romans. And he is greatly frustrated by his failure to make them understand or accept that he understood and accepted God's plan. It's a question where you wonder when you're reading this, you're listening to the play. And by the way, you listen to the play and you have to read along because it is in German. And so you are reading as the play is going on. But you have to, the question is it God's plan? And this is what Jesus is wrestling with himself. It's not as though God is just going to open the heavens and give him instruction. That would be easy, all too easy. He doesn't do that, and that's why Jesus is struggling. But he knows he has received in his mind that he has to do something, and the something that will stand out, that will send the message that God wants sent. He has to make the sacrifice, and it's not like an easy thing for him. Finally, you may ask, how was I affected by the performance? Well, first, I was overwhelmed by the production values. I loved live theater since I saw my first live production of South Pacific when I was 10 years old. I've seen a number of plays on Broadway numerous times, including Jesus Christ Superstar. I did not expect to be blown away by the Passion Play. I thought it would be more kind of, just kind of by the book. No pun intended there. By the book, or just, a more of a set piece. But it wasn't that. There was a lot more to it. The effect was deeper. I have never been as deeply moved by Jesus the man, wrestling with doubt and uncertainty, and never have I felt his agony, physical and emotional, so deeply. I think I will always recall this play at Easter as I consider bunny rabbits delivering Easter eggs. And with that, I'll say, are there questions or comments or thoughts you have about this? Anything that I may clear up for you?
How long did the play last?
Pardon?
How long did the production last?
Oh, it starts in March and will end in October.
But I mean, as what you saw, the production you saw.
What I saw, I'm not sure I know what you mean, Kay. The
your
performance itself, the actual performance was 4 hours, but it's over 6 hours because they take a break, a 2-hour dinner break in between. So it is a bit of sitting, but unlike the Wagner Theater in Germany, which is notorious for seats to keep you awake, the seats were okay, but after you sit in one place for 2 hours, it does get a little. And I might add, by the way, this is in the midst of the pandemic, and they had postponed it for a year, but they came back in 2022 with it. And on our boat, just on our boat, 14 people were removed after exposure to the Passion Play, and we had to put spit in a tube every morning for a week on the boat to make sure they were checking so closely. Yes?
Is there anywhere we can watch this?
Anywhere you can watch it?
Like on YouTube or?
You know, that's a good question. Not that I know of. Yeah, I'm sure it would not be, you could not see it yet because it's still being played live. So if it were available to watch, it would be sometimes after October. And a good question would be, are any of the previous ones out there? And I've never thought about that. Good question. I'm sure they're out there somehow. The question is, can you access them?
Yeah.
Can we do it on YouTube? Probably not, but I don't know.
Everyone's taking off their phones to look it up.
Yeah. Jean, you found it on YouTube? Yes.
I'm originally from Minnesota, and I had an opportunity to go to a Passion Play at a pretty big congregation there. I'm sure it was a toned down version from what you're saying, because it was only an hour. But yeah, it was amazing. And there's angels flying from the sky, live donkeys, animals, and yeah.
And it's not hokey. They do it so well that none of that is hokey, as you would suspect it might
It's
be.
amazing, yeah. And the performance, you know, just like you say, to experience that pain.
Yeah.
Jesus, what he was going through in the acting was just.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I had no idea it had been going on since, what did you say?
Pardon?
1623?
Yeah. From 1636 was the first performance. That's right.
Wow.
That's a long run.
Thank you for sharing today. Appreciate it.
Yes, Jean.
There are videos on YouTube.
There are.
There are?
Yes.
Does it say what years?
June 11th, 2022.
Well, that's the current one.
And 1 month ago,
I'll be darned.
July 15th.
Huh.
So,
Okay. Good to know. Yes, Holly.
It's a town of 5,000 people, right?
About the attendance is just under 5,000 people per performance.
No, I mean, the community, the town.
Oh, the town. I'm sorry. Yes, 5,000 people.
Do their whole cast come from the town, or do they bring people in?
No, you know, it's all they say. I mean, I have no reason to doubt it. Like these people apparently grow up, and people grow up in that town knowing this is their piece of history. And so there's not a problem apparently in finding them. No, they say there are no shills. They're all localists. We had that morning we toured one of Mad Ludwig's castles, and some of us were waiting for the bus to leave, and some of our folks came out from the gift shop and said, "Jesus just gave me change." And in fact, there are 2 Jesus characters, and there's 2 of several other things, because night after night, you need to be spelled, and so they're very much local folks doing this. Anything else?
How about the costuming?
Pardon?
How about the costuming?
The costuming, again, just totally professional. And it's changed over the years. They have a museum of the Passion Play right there. And during the intermission, a lot of us went through, and you could see the years and how things have changed. I would say that Pontius Pilate looked like he was associated with Darth Vader. I mean, that kind of, very clean look that looked very modern, and it helps make him stand out from the rest of the cast. But they attend to details in an amazing way. One example was that every 10 years, the director takes the Jesus character and 2 or 3 others to the Holy Lands for 2 weeks. And they want to get the whole thing down right, including the fabric for the clothes of that period of 30 AD. And so it's incredible efforts that they go to for accuracy and so forth. And by the way, Pilate's threat, as most of you probably realize, was actually carried out 70 years later when the Romans destroyed the temple and dispersed Jews all over that part of the world. So it was not an empty threat at the time of the Passion Play. It was not an empty threat in 70 AD. Yes?
So in this 4-hour production, it just covers the week of Passover.
That's it, yeah.
That's a lot to cover. I mean, that's a lot of time to cover just a week. I mean, it seems like it's...
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, it just seems like, I don't understand what they would do with all that, I don't know.
I know, you wonder, and it's hard to explain that, but it never lags. You know what I'm saying? Come on, get on with this
So
thing.
it starts with Palm Sunday?
Yes.
Start with Palm
Yes,
Sunday?
yes. Yeah, but then of course you've got all this other stuff around it, those plays within the play.
Right.
So that's carrying, those are done quite well also. And so that's moving it along, keeps the pace going and so forth.
Right, so all the council of the Jews and the council of the Romans, and then the disciples themselves, I guess, and interactions.
Yeah, right. And I think that they really try to figure out, you know what the Bible says, but it's hard. What they have done is take what I think are rather staid views or language from the Bible and put it in something you can relate to. And the way they talked and so forth. Right. It's not the these and thous and that sort of thing, even though it's German. But still, they're acting like people would have acted then.
So they have sets, how do they, because that covers from, the streets of Jerusalem to the Garden of Gethsemane to all the different places that it took place. How did they handle the sets?
Well, they have a single venue that was built in 1900, the year 1900. Yeah, and you see it in your hand out there. It's a huge stage, and it goes way back, and I never saw the orchestra. I don't know where the orchestra is, how they hide the orchestra. But, or the chorus, which will just suddenly appear and then disappear. So they really got this down, and it's a lot of technology used to make all that move smoothly as well.
So it has like 3 different stages, kind of on the...
Yeah, it can be seen that way, but it doesn't appear as 3 different stages when you're actually watching it. Beautiful. Yeah. Jean?
Do they use, with the new technology, like up in Ashland, do they use the projections or no? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean, and I'm trying to think. I don't think I saw projections.
Okay.
Of anything. Yeah. So. Okay. Yes.
Do you have to be really familiar with the story to understand and enjoy the play? Like when you
Yeah. So in other words, you come into something brand new, they've got to set the whole thing for you. but is it assumed you know something? I think I'd have to say it's assumed that you know the basic story, and they take it from there. They don't start out with, you know, the baby in the cradle and all that sort of. They assume that when the day he comes in, you know, on Palm Sunday, that you know how he got there, and then the story begins. Yeah.
I think modern productions like Jesus Christ Superstar have done a lot to make the story come alive.
Yeah, I think that's why I mentioned that, because I thought that about Superstar, that it had done a great job of that when we saw that on Broadway.
It's got that memorable tune, Jesus Christ
Superstar.
Who in the heck do you think you are?
That was updating, sure enough. Okay, well, thank you for your attention, folks.